will read a beautiful verse and purport by Srila Prabhupada to the 8th chapter of the 2nd canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Questions by King Parikshit. Dhauta-ātmā puruṣaḥ Kṛṣṇa pāda-mūlaṁ na muñcati mukta-sarva-parikleśaḥ pānthaḥ sva-śaraṇaṁ yathā. Dhauta-ātmā puruṣaḥ Kṛṣṇa dhauta-ātmā puruṣaḥ Kṛṣṇa pāda-mūlaṁ na muñcati pāda-mūlaṁ na muñcati mukta-sarva-parikleśaḥ mukta-sarva-parikleśaḥ pānthaḥ sva-śaraṇaṁ yathā pānthaḥ sva-śaraṇaṁ yathā dhauta-ātmā puruṣaḥ Kṛṣṇa pāda-mūlaṁ na muñcati mukta-sarva-parikleśaḥ pānthaḥ sva-śaraṇaṁ yathā. Dhauta-ātmā puruṣaḥ Kṛṣṇa
pāda-mūlaṁ na muñcati
pāda-mūlaṁ na muñcati
mukta-sarva-parikleśaḥ pānthaḥ sva-śaraṇaṁ yathā dhauta-ātmā puruṣaḥ Kṛṣṇa pāda-mūlaṁ na muñcati mukta-sarva-parikleśaḥ pānthaḥ sva-śaraṇaṁ yathā dhauta-ātmā puruṣaḥ Kṛṣṇa pāda-mūlaṁ na muñcati mukta-sarva-parikleśaḥ pānthaḥ sva-śaraṇaṁ yathā.
Mataji.
Dhauta-ātmā puruṣaḥ Kṛṣṇa
Dhauta-ātmā puruṣaḥ Kṛṣṇa
pāda-mūlaṁ na muñcati
pāda-mūlaṁ na muñcati
mukta-sarva-parikleśaḥ pānthaḥ sva-śaraṇaṁ yathā.
Dhauta-ātmā, whose hearts have been cleansed. Puruṣaḥ, the living being. Kṛṣṇa, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pāda-mūlaṁ, the shelter of the lotus feet. Na, never. Muñcati, gives up. Mukta, liberated. Sarva, all. Parikleśaḥ, of all miseries of life. pānthaḥ, the traveler, sva-śaraṇaṁ, of his own abode, yathā, as it were. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vijnana Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. A pure devotee of the Lord, whose heart has once been cleansed by the process of devotional service, never relinquishes the lotus feet of the Lord Kṛṣṇa, for they fully satisfy him as a traveler is satisfied at home after troubled journey. Purport. One who is not a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord Kṛṣṇa is not completely cleansed in the heart. But a perfectly cleansed person never quits the devotional service of the Lord. In discharging such devotional service as ordered by Brahmājī to Nārada in the preaching of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, sometimes a representative of the Lord engaged in the preaching work meets various so-called difficulties. This was exhibited by Lord Nityānanda when he delivered the two fallen souls, Jagāi and Mādhāi, and similarly, Lord Jesus Christ was crucified by the non-believers. But such difficulties are very gladly suffered by the devotees in preaching, because in such activities, although apparently very severe, the devotees of the Lord feel transcendental pleasure because the Lord is satisfied. Prahlāda Mahārāja suffered greatly, but still he never forgot the lotus feet of the Lord. This is because a pure devotee of the Lord is so purified in his heart that he cannot leave the shelter of Lord Kṛṣṇa in any circumstances. There is no self-interest in such service. The progress of culturing knowledge by the jnanis or the bodily gymnastics by the yogis are ultimately given up by the respective performance. But a devotee of the Lord cannot give up the service of the Lord, for he is ordered by his spiritual master. Pure devotees like Nārada and Nityānanda Prabhu take up the order of the spiritual master as the sustenance of life. They do not mind what becomes of the future of their lives. They take the matter very seriously, as the order comes from the higher authority, from the representative of the Lord, and from the Lord himself. The example set herein is very appropriate. A traveler leaves home to search for wealth in far distant places, sometimes in the forest and sometimes in the ocean and sometimes on the hilltops. Certainly, there are many troubles for the traveler when he is in such unknown places. But all such troubles are at once mitigated as soon as the sense of his family affection is remembered. And as soon as he returns home, he forgets all such troubles on the way. A pure devotee of the Lord is exactly in a family tie with the Lord. And therefore, he is undeterred in discharging his duty in a full affectionate tie with the Lord. Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai. Dhauta-ātmā puruṣaḥ Kṛṣṇa pāda-mūlaṁ na muñcati mukta-sarva-parikleśaḥ pānthaḥ sva-śaraṇaṁ yathā. A pure devotee of the Lord whose heart has once been cleansed by the process of devotional service never relinquishes the lotus feet of Lord Kṛṣṇa, for they fully satisfy him as a traveler is satisfied at home after a troubled journey. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Ajanulambita bhujau kanakavadatu sankirtanai kapitaro kamalaya daksha Vishwambaro dvijavaro yugadharma palo Vande jagat priyakaro karanavataro Entah pravishya mama vachim imam prasuptam Sanjivayate kila shakti darasvadam nanyam shahasta Charana shravana tvagadim pranannamo bhagavate puruṣaya tubhim Svasyastu vishvasya kalah prasidatam deyantu bhutani Shivam mithodhiya manascha badram bhajata tadoksaja aveshyatam nomati vajahai ki. Hare Krishna. So we are very fortunate because we have opportunity to hear from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is a very special book. Hearing of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is a very powerful sadhana, very powerful spiritual practice. What spiritual practice is supposed to do with us? Spiritual practice is supposed to purify us from the contaminations of our karma, from our misconceptions which are acquired because of our long-standing desire to enjoy matter. This is a very gross mistake which we all have. We are spirit soul, we are spirit by nature. But somehow or other we have this conception, very deeply rooted conception, that I am the spirit soul. And most of us kind of have this intuitive knowledge that I am spirit soul, that I am not dying, that there is something beyond this matter. But nevertheless, despite of this knowledge, we have very deeply rooted desire to enjoy matter, or very deeply embedded in us conception that I may become happy by interaction with the matter. It's just not possible, just really not possible, because of the nature of the soul and the nature of the matter. They are completely opposite. The matter can never make the spirit soul happy, because that's it's not possible. They are opposite by nature. The matter is just temporary, it's dull, and you can only become happy if you are in contact with some spiritual happiness, because you are spiritual by nature. So this misconception is there, this gross misconception is there. And Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, destroys this misconception and therefore purifies us. This is the purification which is necessary. All our sufferings are due to this mistake or due to this contamination that somehow or other I will become happy. If I get some more money or better flat in Bangalore or bungalow somewhere, or if I go to America, I'll become happy. This is such a strange misconception. So many people are not happy in America, but Indians think that if they go to America, they will become happy. So all these strange things, all these ideas, all these hopes, all these conceptions of happiness. If you go through Bangalore and see all these big billboards, advertisement boards, they're all, different misconceptions of happiness. You know, you will be happy like this, or you will be happy like this, or you will be happy if you follow the advice of Amitabh Bachchan. Whatever it is. It may be underwear, or it may be some bank loan, or whatever. He has all the secrets of happiness. So, why he is there? Because he is the icon. He is the ideal. You know, people think that he is happy. He's not happy. He is the same conditioned soul, and he will, you know, he is afraid of this and that. But, you know, people, they have this desire, I want to be happy. And the material world offers us different recipes of happiness. And we are foolish enough to take these recipes seriously. You know, it's all cheating. All this advertisement is cheating. But we want to be cheated. And we really think that this is the way to become happy. So, this is what purification means. Purification of our karma is only purification from these misconceptions. And therefore, other methods of spiritual, so-called spiritual purifications, they are not really effective. Srila Prabhupada is very neglectfully calls yoga here gymnastics, you know. In one of the previous purports, he calls yoga mystic gymnastics. You know, you do some mystic gymnastics. We just passed by a big yoga hall. So people, they hope that they will be purified just by sitting in, I don't know, in whatever position, just by touching by the right leg, left ear. You know, this is, you know, you can only be happy by doing yoga after you finish yoga. You know, you squeeze yourself up and then you release yourself and you think, oh, this is nice. You know, this is how you become happy by doing yoga. You know, you're sitting in a very unnatural position, then you release yourself. And you are in Shavasana and you think, oh, yoga is so nice. But how it will purify you from these misconceptions? How it will relieve you from all these ideas that I can become happy by being here? It's not possible. It's just not possible. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada is not very, you know, of high opinion about yoga. I mean, it's a good gymnastic. It's gymnastic. But the problem is much deeper. Our problem, we have to understand that we have very deeply rooted problem that is indifference towards the Lord. We are indifferent. We are not really interested in Him. Because we have all these different misconceptions, we are interested in something else. We're really interested in material happiness, in matter. But, you know, how many people are really interested in the Lord? You know, even in India, what to speak about the rest of the world? The rest of the world is primarily atheistic, Gnostic. You know, I am from Russia and I know people are, you know, atheists. Of course, somewhere deep down they believe in God, but at least they proclaim to be atheists. But the point is that even if people believe in God, they're not interested in God. There is a difference in believe in God. I believe in God because I know that God can help me. That there is somebody up there, you know, Uparvala, as they say in Hindi. You know? So, Uparvala is there. And because he's Uparvala, he can help me. But are we really interested in God? Are we really interested in knowing who He is? what he likes and what he doesn't like, how, what he wants from us. Are we really interested? We know what we want. It's such a strange idea to find out what Lord wants from us. What if he wants something which we don't want? It will be a big blow. Why do we need the Lord who wants something different that we want? So people believe in God, but their conception of God is that, he's somebody who can help me. That's it. There is no more conception, because and it's still the same indifference towards the Lord, because we want to exploit the Lord. We don't want to serve the Lord. We want to exploit the Lord. Sometimes people, they say, "I love you, I love you, I love you," But what they really mean to say, "I just want to exploit you. But I want to exploit only you, not anybody else. Therefore, I love you." So the other day I was traveling in a car, and the driver, there was some radio or whatever, some program, and there was some Bollywood songs or whatever, some songs, and then all of a sudden there was some sort of in between. The lady started yelling on the top of her lungs, "I love you! I love you!" It didn't sound like you love me. It really sounded, I need to exploit you. I need somebody to exploit. "I love you! Come here, I love you!" So in the same way, people think they love God. But they really want to exploit God. They don't have interest in God. So Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is a powerful sadhana. Hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is a powerful sadhana, because if we hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, just hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam again and again and again, from the proper source, as Prabhupada always stresses, especially in this second canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which is about the transmission of the message of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. If we hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam again and again and again, then amazing thing will happen. As it is said here very directly and clearly in the previous verse, that the Lord Himself will enter our heart. Just by hearing the sound vibration, which is the representation of the Lord, which is non-different from the Lord, the sound vibration of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which is the sound incarnation of the Lord, which is the Lord Himself. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is non-different from the Lord. The Lord Himself enters our heart, enters our memory, and starts purifying the heart. Shinvata svakatha Krishna punya shravana kirtana pridyantak stohya badrani vidunodi suhrit satam. In the very beginning of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Sutta Goswami says that within our heart, Suhrit is there. Suhrit, and he is real Suhrit, Suhrit Satam. And when we hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Srinvatak Svakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana, one of the names of the Lord in Vishnu Sahasranam, there is this name of the Lord, beautiful name of the Lord, Punya Shravana Kirtana. That's the name of the Lord. He is, when we hear about Him, it's punya. It's the something which is very auspicious, some very auspicious activity, and that's the Lord Himself. So when we hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Shinvatak Svakatha Krishna, the Svakatha Krishna, the stories about Krishna, spoken by His Sva, by His devotees, by the greatest devotees who have this keen interest about the personality of Godhead, then what will happen? Hridyantak stohya badrani vidunoti suhrit satam. This suhrit satam, the true well-wisher, the true friend of ours, who is sitting within our heart, Hridyantah stha, he is sitting within our heart, he starts vidunoti. He starts cleansing the heart. He himself, the Lord himself, takes a big broom and starts sweeping our heart from all these misconceptions. As it is said here, the same root, the same dhatu, Sanskrit dhatu is used here when it is said dhauta-ātmā. Dhauta-ātmā, the purified soul. Vidunoti, the same root. The heart becomes cleansed. Cleansed of what? Of all these misconceptions. Because the Lord is happy when we hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. That's the powerful sadhana, and it becomes powerful if we properly do it. If we really hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Why? What is the reason why we hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? We hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam because the Lord wants me to hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Not because of some other ulterior reason. You know, like Prabhupada here in the second canto, which is again about the hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, how to hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. What is the proper method of hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? Srila Prabhupada again and again says that you can hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam as a matter of ritual. It's auspicious, it's good. You know, somebody's father died and, you know, he happened to have some few lakhs, extra lakhs of money. So he arranges some Bhagavatam Saptaha. He invites some, you know, heavy builded Bhagavatam Kathakar who learned it in a special school, you know. There is a special school in Vrindavan. There is a special school how to present Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in a very attractive way, you know, and they learned all kinds of bhajans and this and that. And, you know, for 7 days people come and, you know, they're being entertained. That's good. That may be not so bad, but ultimately nothing changes. After such hearing, if you hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam as a matter of ritual, because, you know, because my grandfather heard Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, maybe I should also hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and my grandmother liked Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. No, but that's not the point. Mahāraja Parikṣit didn't hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam because his grandfather heard Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Of course, his grandfather was a hero of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. He didn't even hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. He was the Nayak of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. He played a very important role in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. But that was not the reason. Mahāraja Parikṣit heard Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam because he wanted to be cleansed at heart. He's asking here, this is the speech of Mahāraja Parikṣit. The verse which we read is the questions of Mahāraja Parikṣit to Shukadev Goswami. And he says, please, please tell me Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam because very soon I will die. And I want to be completely clean in my heart before I die. It's very important to be clean before we die. Otherwise, you know, the contamination will breed another contamination. That's the way it works. You know, if you have contamination, you have some affinity to the dirt. If the contamination is still there in the heart, then we're kind of attracted to the same dirty things. So we will be born again and again and again and again. And Kali Yuga in the meantime progresses more and more and more. There will be more and more IT companies in Bangalore. And you can be happily engaged in all these IT companies 24 hours a day or whatever. But it's just a useless repetition of the same thing. So therefore Mahāraja Parikṣit says, please tell me about the Lord so that my heart could be completely cleansed. His question, it's very interesting. In the previous chapter, Narada Muni, while explaining how he heard Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam from Lord Brahma, in the previous chapter he said that Lord Brahma told him, Narada Muni, please describe the signs of Godhead with determination and in a manner by which it will be quite possible for the human being to develop transcendental devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Hari, the super soul of every living being and the summum bonum source of all energies. The Lord Brahma tells Narada, you preach Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you tell Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, because that's the only way. That's the only way to change the virus in our brain. We have, hardware which is wrongly wired. And we all know when the hardware is bad, software doesn't work. You need a good hardware so that the good software works. So what Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam does, hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, it changes the hardware. It goes deeper. When we hear some other things, it may change little programs here and there, but the hardware remains intact. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is an amazing book because if we hear properly, it goes very, very deep within our consciousness and changes the connections within our brain. Literally we have the, different connections between different neurons, which is the result of our past activities, all the samskaras. So when we hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, this change imperceptibly takes place. Believe it or not, it's happening now within your brain. Some new neuron paths are being formed within your brain, the paths which will tell you, maybe I should listen about the Lord more. So that's what's happening. And Narada Muni explains, Shukadeva Goswami explains that Lord Brahma told Narada Muni, you preach Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, because that's the only way, because that's the powerful sadhana. And as soon as Maharaja Parikshit hears this, he tells me, he tells not me, he tells Maharaja, he tells Shukadeva Goswami, luckily for himself. He tells to Shukadeva Goswami, please explain to me how Narada Muni preached Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. I want to hear this. Why? Why does he ask this question? Srila Prabhupada answers in this purport. Because the preaching of Narada Muni was pure. And therefore, when we hear how Narada Muni preaches the message of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, we may get the full benefit of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Why it is pure? Because Narada Muni preaches Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Why? Because his spiritual master, Lord Brahma, ordered him to do this. Prabhupada explained this. And he basically is explaining about himself. Why is he doing? Why is he preaching Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? Why is he writing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? Because his spiritual master told him to do this. He does not have any ulterior motive. He does not want anything from you. He only wants to give the Supreme Lord to you. And that's the first condition why Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam can be successful. If the speaker who speaks does not have any ulterior motive, if he just wants to give the Supreme Lord to you, because the Supreme Lord wants to give himself to the conditioned souls, and therefore he speaks to Lord Brahma, and therefore Brahma speaks to Narada, and therefore Narada speaks to Vyasadeva, and therefore Vyasadeva teaches Shukadev, and therefore Shukadev now speaks to Maharaja Parikshit. And when Maharaja Parikshit hears this, this is the pure line of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, not just, somebody, a professional person who was trained to speak Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, but somebody who speaks from the heart, who speaks because he has realization of the happiness which is the experience of somebody in whose heart Lord entered. As I said, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, changes you from within because the Lord enters the heart, or because the Lord Himself purifies your heart. And if you experience this happiness, you will start preaching. What preaching means? Preaching means, as Prabhupada says, if your heart is purified from the ulterior motives, and you understand that the lotus feet of the Lord, Krishna pāda-mūlaṁ, is the most important thing, and you experience how nice it is, you're at home. The simile which is here, the metaphor which is here is that when somebody is traveling, he's a traveler, and he goes through very different arduous journey, and he encounters innumerable difficulties. Prabhupada says that for such a traveler, and we are all such travelers, we are traveling in this foreign land, and because material world is not our home. We are really not at home here. We are trying to, get a cozy home here, but we are really not. We don't belong to this world. We are not the inhabitants of this world. Prabhupada says that when a traveler in a foreign land going through immense difficulties just remembers home, he becomes happy. When he just remembers how he is loved, his dear and near ones, he becomes happy. I remember at one point, because I had to immigrate from Russia, from my homeland, to Sweden because of my practice of Krishna consciousness. It was a severe persecution, and the devotees arranged that I go to Sweden to translate Prabhupada's books into Russian. And I went to Sweden, and I was living in a very comfortable situation in ashram, but I was so homesick. I was just missing my dear people, devotees, and at that time, when you could leave Russia, it was very difficult to leave Russia, but you would never return back to Russia. Russia was behind the closed curtain, the Iron Curtain. So I left Russia and couldn't go back. And I remember I was just, I was practically, I was drying up because I was in a foreign land. It was something, and just by remembering, my dear, friends and, relatives and this and that, I would get some relief. Prabhupada says in the same way, even if you don't realize the Supreme Lord, but you hear about Him, you feel at home. So many people, I know this, so many people told me, they read Bhagavad Gita for the first time and they felt, oh, this is something, I felt home. Finally something makes sense. Nothing else makes sense. When we hear that there is the Supreme Lord and we belong to Him, we are His people, and He loves us, and He is waiting for us, and we have eternal occupation and eternal relationship with Him, and He is our closest relative. He is our closest, who is, eternally related to us. It makes sense. It makes complete sense. And when we hear Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, it feels home, right? I remember I was told I didn't know anything about Krishna. I didn't know anything about anything, But my friend, he tricked me. He said, "You just chant this mantra, Hare Krishna, and you will see aura of people. And I was interested in this thing, aura. So I started chanting Hare Krishna, and I thought, there's nothing to lose, I will chant a little bit, and if I get bored, I will give up chanting. I'm still chanting, and I still don't see aura. 40 years later, I don't see aura, but somehow or other I'm chanting. Why? Because it feels home. It feels natural. God is there, and this is His name. I'm praying to Him, and it's nice. So basically, coming back to our topic is that, coming back to the verse, that was the introduction to the verse. I'm sorry for such a long introduction. But basically, what is said in the verse, very important thing is said in this verse. And Maharaja Parikshit heard that Narada Muni was ordered by Lord Brahma to preach Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Immediately his reaction, tell me how he was preaching, what he was preaching. This interest is there. And in the same way, when we hear about Srila Prabhupada, how he went penniless to America, please answer honestly. Would you go to America? Who out of you would go to America if you only had 40 rupees in your pocket? And no friends and acquaintance in America. Just go to America. Who would go? One has to be crazy to do it. And on the top, you are all young. You are 30, 40 years old, Prabhupada was 70 years old. And his well-wisher, Sumati Maharaji, she told him directly, Swamiji, don't go to America, you will die there. If somebody, your well-wisher will say, don't go to America, you will die there. You're 70 years old, you only have 40 rupees in your pocket. Would you go to America? I have my doubts. He goes to America. Why he goes to America? Because he has the complete conviction that if he speaks Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, people will get relief from their sufferings. That's the magic of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And he proved that this magic worked. That this magic works. He goes to America and he starts speaking about Krishna. And nobody knows about Krishna there. Nobody heard about Krishna there. Why is he talking about some Krishna? What is this Krishna? But he speaks and he goes under the tree and he starts chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And people stop, and people listen, and people feel, I arrived home. I am at home. I'm where I belong to, where I'm supposed to be. This is the place. So many people told me, so many devotees in Russia, who never heard about Krishna before reading Srila Prabhupada's books, who never heard about anything, who were atheists. When they hear this, they feel, something happened with them. It is said here in this verse that only when you're completely cleansed at heart, when you're dhauta-ātmā, when your heart is completely cleansed, then by hearing about Krishna, you feel, you have this feeling, you feel that, I finally arrived to my destination. This is what I need to know, this is what I need to hear, this is where I need to be. I need to be where Krishna is being glorified. I need to be where the Krishna Kirtan is there, where people are singing Krishna's name. I need to be where people are speaking about Krishna. Because, when people starts doing this, they become normal. The people which don't do this, they are, with all due respects, they are not normal. I'm quoting just one lady. One lady told me, recently I spoke with her, she said, for my whole life, I was looking for a society of normal people and I couldn't find. I was going here and there. And finally I came and it's normal people. I'm very surprised. I came to the devotees. They're normal. They have spiritual interests, they're normal in their dealings, in their behavior, they're not rough, they're not, So, when we hear it is said that when somebody who is purified at heart, due to hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, he will never be able to give up the lotus feet of the Lord because he's parikleśaḥ. He is mukta from all the parikleśaḥ. Not just klesha, parikleśaḥ. Parikleśaḥ means all-round kleshas. He is completely cleansed of all the sufferings. When this magic of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam happens, when you hear about the Lord and you hear it properly and you hear it from the proper source, you hear it from somebody who realized the beauty and the kindness and the love of the Lord, you hear about this, then you become cleansed and then you will never give up the lotus feet of the Lord. Some people tried. There is a funny story about this. There was one devotee and somehow or other, he had some difficulties and he didn't like somebody and he heard about this. He liked Prabhupada's books, but he didn't, he wanted to give up Krishna consciousness. He wanted to give up Krishna. Whenever he wanted to forget about Krishna. He was from America. He got a book and then, he threw the book and he wanted to cut all his connections with devotees. But whenever he would be, either Harinam party would come or, somebody, something would happen. Ultimately, he decided to go to Alaska. Alaska is the most northern state of America. And he thought, and there in Alaska, there's no devotees for sure. Nobody will find me there. And I will forget about Krishna. I will watch TV day in and day out, 24 hours a day. And I forget all this about Krishna. I cannot just, I don't want to remember about him. So he takes the plane. He goes to the plane. And then he boards down from the plane, goes to the airport, and the first person whom he meets in the airport is a devotee who offers him Bhagavad Gita. And he becomes so disgusted. Anyway, he still has some hope. He rented a hotel. He goes to a hotel. He locks himself inside the hotel room, and finally he turns on the TV, and the first thing which he watches on TV, Harinam party goes, and TV in the news. And then he says, "Okay, Krishna, I surrender to you. You don't want me to give you up." But it's like this. When we really get connection with Krishna, Krishna enters our heart. And we cannot really give him up. We really feel that ultimately, there is no need for me to give up. It doesn't matter whether, the external circumstances are favorable or not favorable. Prabhupada is actually explaining that when you have this realization of the happiness of being with Krishna, hearing about Krishna, speaking about Krishna, preaching about Krishna, then you will never give up preaching despite of all these difficulties and all these problems which may be there. Whoever preaches Krishna consciousness, if he is trying to do it, there will be some difficulties. People don't like it. Immediately when devotees started preaching Krishna consciousness in Russia, the whole Russian state, atheistic state of Soviet Union at that time, which was totally, completely dead against any religion, start harassing them. But devotees didn't give it up. It's interesting, in the first period of time when there was severe persecution of Krishna consciousness, and the devotees were not even so experienced, but somehow or other they felt that this is the right thing to do. And there was a secret police, KGB it's called, in the Soviet Union, and they were practically ruling the country. The country was very, authoritarian rule was there, and the secret police was watching everyone. They would put some bugs in your apartment, to find out what you're doing when you're alone, and this and that. And all the devotees, they experienced some problems, one way or another. And oftentimes, these people from the secret police, they would try to seduce devotees. They would tell them, you just for the formality's sake, say that I give up Krishna. And we will write it down, and you go on, you do it quietly there. For formality's sake, you say that you relinquish this Krishna consciousness, your connection with Krishna consciousness. And usually, and we will not harass you anymore. My friend, the friend of mine who actually made me a devotee, he was in prison for 3.5 years, almost 4 years, I think, for practicing Krishna consciousness. And on a number of occasions, he was told, you just, for formality's sake, you give up Krishna, and we will release you from the prison. He said, no, I will not do it. I cannot do this, even for formality's sake. And one devotee did it. He was harassed severely by the KGB, and they called him to his office, to their office, and they said, you write down that you're giving up this Krishna consciousness. You signed that you are rejecting this Krishna consciousness. And he did it. Next morning, he couldn't chant Hare Krishna. He just could not chant Hare Krishna. The connection was lost. He was trying, he was crying, he was, it's just somehow or other he couldn't do it. Because he rejected Krishna. And Krishna, he says, yathā mam prapadyante tam tathā me bhajamyaham. If you reject me, I reject you. He underwent severe difficulties because of this. So the point of this verse is that when you have experience, even if it's a little experience, even if you are not completely cleansed, but still you have some experience, it's there. Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita, nihabhikrama yashasti, nihabhikrama nashasti, pratyavayo navidyate, svampam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. That even if you have little experience of real Krishna consciousness, it will never leave you. It will always remain with you, unless you commit an offense. This is a secret. If you want to give up Krishna consciousness, you have to commit offenses. Then Krishna may leave you. But if you don't commit offense, then this connection is established, and that's eternal connection. And whether the difficulties are there or not there, it's something real. And you cannot really rejects the reality. And that's the test if you're sincere. If you had the sincere intentions and if you hear the sincere message of parampara, of these pure souls which are purely preaching Krishna consciousness because they were ordered by higher authorities, because they ultimately fulfill the desire of Krishna, then you will never be able to give up Krishna consciousness. Why? For what? And this process is eternal. You will continue hearing about Krishna here till the end of your life, and in the spiritual world you will do the same thing. In the spiritual world, people come together and they say, you know what Krishna did today? There is constant Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam katha going on. Many pastimes are there. Krishna is so beautiful, and they come and they say, I saw Krishna today. You know how beautiful he is. You know how beautifully he is decorated. You know, he looked at me and his eyes were so kind. And his eyes went so deep into me. And I felt such a beautiful experience I had while doing this. And when we hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, basically, this is the experience which we should have. Krishna is looking at us. Krishna is speaking with us. Krishna is telling us, finally, you are here. Finally, you hear about myself. After hearing so many other garbage, you're hearing about myself. And if we do this, following Prabhupada's footsteps, we will be successful. And we should preach. We should tell others. Like on the way here, I was told how the Sati Sai Baba people preaching. If you had some miracle in your life, if Sati Sai Baba, one acquaintance of mine, he told me, he said, Sati Sai Baba is such a great saint. I was in my office, and all of a sudden I saw this very clearly, his figure. And he was saying something to me. And at this moment of time, I smelled some smoke. And he said, immediately I ran home and I found out that my iron, which I was ironing, was still on, and a little bit, and it was already smoking. So Sati Sai Baba told me that my iron at my home is smoking. So see how he's God. So they say, if you experience this miracle, you should preach about Sati to others. You should get others involved. See, this works. So I'm with the same message. I'm here speaking with you. If you experience the magic of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, if you experience the touch of Krishna by hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you should preach. If you experience this feeling that ultimately I found something which is so amazing, and just by remembering about Krishna, I feel already relieved from all the sufferings which are there. And people know. I spoke with one disciple of mine, one devotee. He said, I was in such a suffering. I was in such a difficult situation. And he said, at that time, I wanted to speak with you, but somehow or other we couldn't speak. And then he said, I started listening to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And I was relieved completely. All this intense, acute sufferings which was there was relieved because I understood that this is something temporary which will be gone, and ultimately it's not so important, and there is much more important things in the world. My relationship with Krishna. So if you experience this magic of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, that Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam relieves you from your karma, from your misconceptions, changes your personality, changes your heart, changes your outlook of the world. I tell you one little story and I'll finish with this little story. It's also a very interesting story. Recently, one devotee wrote to me. He's a preacher. He's an old devotee for a long time. He preaches. And he told me one little experience. He said that he preaches to new people. And these new people become interested. And then one lady whom he preached, is a Brahmājī, and one lady whom he preached, she started complaining to him. She said, she explained some happening in her life, and that somebody basically cheated her. And she's a very new. She just started coming to Krishna consciousness, and she understood some ideas of Krishna consciousness. And somebody cheated her and betrayed her, and she came to this Brahmājī, to this person, and she said, "You know what? I have a problem." She said, "What kind of problem you have?" And she explained this whole story. I will not explain the story. It doesn't really matter. It's this whole story, whole drama, little drama of 40-year-old women, And then she said, and she said, "What's your problem?" He saw that this is the problem which she describes. She said, "No, this is not my problem. My problem is that because they did this to me, somehow or other I cannot love them. This is my problem. I try to love them despite they did this to me, but I cannot do this. It's just something inside me rebels against it. That's my problem. Can you help me how I can be relieved from this problem?" And this devotee writes to me. She said, when she wrote this to me, when she explained this to me, he said, I was shocked because I realized that she is more Krishna conscious than me, because she now realized how she should behave, that she should behave nicely with everyone. And I already forgot it because I'm a senior devotee. I don't need. But she said basically what she said to him. I value this little sprout of Krishna consciousness which I have so much, and I'm afraid that I lose it because of my bad relationship with these people. This is the proof. This is the magic of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. People, they get little connection with Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and they change their relationship to the world. Before that, she would be habitually, hating them without any problem. Habitually. Somebody did something wrong to me, I have the full right to do something wrong to him. I have the full right to hate him. I have the full right to say something to him. What I want to say is that people listen to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, their heart changes. Something very important happens with us when we listen to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, if we listen to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam properly. And if we experience this change of the heart, which we're supposed to experience, this is the title of one chapter in the second canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, then we should preach the same message to others and tell that they should hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and read the books of Srila Prabhupada. I guess that's it. I'm too long. Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you very much for wonderfully sharing so many beautiful pastimes and realize and views. But for us at a sadhaka level, whenever some difficulties or obstacles or some challenges comes up, either we get distracted or deviated or really get a lot of anxiety. And if somehow or other, if you really come over it with the grace of the Lord and the Vaishnavas, and then we feel that, how I am so special, right? I came over it. It means that I am a special devotee. So how do you really come up with the first level and then the second level?
The more you think that I am a special devotee, the more chances are there that Krishna will show to you that you are not so special by giving you some difficulties. So better you don't think that you're so special. Otherwise you're asking for troubles. You know, these difficulties are there in our life. They're in everyone's life, and they basically show to us the level of our devotion, the depths of our devotion. I remember I had some crisis. I had severe crisis, and I spoke with Guru Maharaj about this. And he started chuckling. He said, "Oh, Krishna shows to you, maybe you're not so great as a devotee." Perhaps. So these tests are there. Krishna sends this test. It's not for him. He knows the level of our devotion. He doesn't need to test it. It's for us. Because we tend to have an illusion about ourselves. That we tend to overestimate the depths of our emotions. You know, something little happens with our life and we become totally distracted and disturbed, and we, you know, only think about this and we cannot concentrate on Bhagavatam. But it's only a stimuli to do sadhana more intensely. You know, you can do, there's no doubt about it. But also, perhaps you have to ask yourself whether I'm doing it in a proper frame of mind. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is a powerful sadhana, there is no doubt about it. But whether I'm doing it properly, whether my attitude when I hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is proper or not, because the efficiency of the sadhana very much depends on our attitude, with which attitude we do it. If we do it properly, then it will be very quickly working. Vidunoti suhrit satam, nashta prayeshva padishu nityam bhagavata sevaya. Almost all the problems will be cleansed by just nityam bhagavata sevaya, regular hearing of Bhagavatam and devotee Bhagavatam. Those people who have relationship with the Lord. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for your speech today. And the question I have is like there are two situations. Like in one situation, that it was that person went to Alaska. He wanted to get out of Krishna, but Krishna still not getting out of him. The other person, just for the sake in the jail, he said like, okay, I will get out of Krishna, but Krishna left him. What is the mistake the other person did?
Well, see, Krishna is a person, and therefore he is unpredictable. When you're dealing with persons, you cannot really say, you know, you always have to do it like this, you know. When you're dealing with robots, you can say. Krishna is a person. Somehow or other he liked this first person because, you know, we never know exactly the reasons why Krishna behaves this way or that way. But my speculation is that there was a deeper connection between the first person, and his anger towards Krishna was kind of superficial. It was just little superficial, but there was deeply rooted connection. And because of this deeply rooted connection, you know, like sometimes we feel this, that there is some connection. And, you know, some people have very deeply rooted connection from past lives. You know, maybe this particular devotee who wanted to hide from Krishna in Alaska and found out that Krishna is there in Alaska too. You know, maybe he was connected with Krishna for already many lifetimes, and it was little mistake. And, you know, he actually reacted nicely, you know, when he saw this Harinam party on the TV. He became immediately, he said, okay, Krishna, I surrender to you. So whereas this other person, again, I'm nobody to judge. I'm just telling the real life story, what happens with him. Maybe there was some lesson Krishna wanted to teach him. Ultimately, Krishna would not give him up. Krishna never gives up his devotee. But for some time, his devotee may temporarily experience difficulties. So there is ultimately no loss for even the second devotee I explained about. But Krishna wanted to teach the lesson that we should be true to ourselves. In certain I can imagine a condition when person would do this, when a devotee would do this for the sake of higher purpose, and Krishna would be very happy for him doing this. But there are also some other circumstances where Krishna is displeased. So therefore we have to be very sensitive. When we're dealing with, why people, like all the machines? Because you don't have to be sensitive in dealing with machines. When you are with your, of course, if it's an Indian-made machine, maybe you have to be sensitive a little bit. But normally, you don't have to be too sensitive. You're dealing with your smartphone and you're doing this, and the smartphone behaves the way you like him or it to behave with you. But when you're dealing with the person, you have to be very sensitive. And therefore people, they don't like to deal with the persons nowadays, because they are not so sensitive. You're doing something which other person doesn't like, and you don't even understand why he doesn't like this. But that's the glory of dealing with the persons. When you're dealing with the person, you can learn how to become sensitive. You develop yourself, you develop sensitivity, you develop your personality. So in this similar way, Krishna is a person, and we have to be very sensitive when we're dealing with him. Sometimes we chant and we feel very blissful, and we chant that Krishna is near, and then other day we chant and we feel nothing. Why? Krishna is not happy with us. And we have to ask ourselves question, why he's not happy with us? What did I do wrong? Why all of a sudden such a change in the reciprocation which is going on? Krishna is not only sensitive, he is super sensitive. He is the super soul, and therefore he is super sensitive. He's very sensitive, and therefore we have to be super careful in dealing with the super sensitive person. It means basically we have to be very conscientious, very sincere within our heart. Prabhupada writes in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is the bigger cheater. If you want to cheat Krishna, he will definitely cheat you, because he is a better cheater than you. So don't try to cheat him. Be very conscientious in dealings with him. Yes.
What is the first quality a devotee must develop to serve Krishna or please Krishna?
Yeah, that's the first quality which devotee must develop: sincerity or simplicity. Saralata. Saralata means to be simple at heart, to be straightforward, at least in dealings with Krishna. Don't try to cheat, or, in this way we will be free from this tendency of self-deception. We should be very, very conscientious. I'm doing this because, I have to do this. And this is the wrong motive. Again, this wrong motive is affecting me. We have to, do this self-introspection and try to be very straightforward with others. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada said, he says, Vaishnavata means Saralata. He equated this quality of Saralata with being a Vaishnava with Vaishnava. So that's the most important point. And then everything else comes from it. Humility and tolerance and everything else. Saralata is very important. Okay. Thank you very, very much. Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. Grantharaj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai.